Hey there, we find ourselves once again here at the virtual campus of the Apartment Academy, the multifamily industry's only operations-focused podcast and your institute for higher NOI. I'm your host, the Dean of the Apartment Academy, Daniel Cunningham, and today's guest lecturer, Stewart Beal, is the founder of Beal Properties, and I think a classic story of a bootstrapped, ground-up creation of a very successful real estate company. And if any of you are considering venturing into multifamily real estate investing and operations, Stewart's a great model to listen to hear at least a snippet of what those struggles and successes look like in the early days. So anxious to have him on. Here he is. All right, Professor Beal, welcome here to Lecture Hall Room 101 here at the Apartment Academy. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Stewart, let's start a little bit. Let's kick things off by talking about just the company itself. Give us a little introduction to Beal Properties, size, types of assets you manage, that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay, great. So we manage 3,000 apartments, single-family homes, and office spaces in about 65 cities around Metro Detroit. Right now, we manage about 500 separate properties. So the average unit count per property is quite small, although in my career, I've managed many properties over 150 units, 250 units, 468 units, but those are in real estate syndications where we recently sold the properties. So right now, our average size is probably like a 30-unit apartment building, and we do scattered site out of our offices. So previously, at some parts of our career, we've had properties where the property's large enough where we have an office at the property. Right now, we have regional offices. So we have an office in Grand Rapids, Lansing, Ypsilanti, Michigan, Detroit, and Toledo, which are in office buildings. No apartments on site, but we manage apartments nearby. So that's our setup right now.
Got it. And you founded the company, right?
Yeah, I founded the company. This year is our 20-year anniversary. I bought a 5-unit rental property on Eastern Michigan University campus in Ypsilanti, Michigan, 20 years ago last month.
And then fast forward us a little bit to what the impact of the of the pandemic was on your portfolio, how that changed your business through that process.
Yeah, so just to kind of fast forward through my career, I bought a property a month until the foreclosure crisis. Then in the foreclosure crisis, there was so much default in the area in which I lived that I was able to buy at least one property a month for 36 straight months through the foreclosure crisis. Then exiting the foreclosure crisis, I started doing real estate syndications. And so when the pandemic hit, we were managing not only the 3,000 units that I manage today, but we were managing another 5,000 units. That was a partnership. So it was like 2 separate organizations, but in total, I was involved in about 8,000 units when the pandemic hit. And I remember when the pandemic hit, I laid on my back and just stared at the ceiling and, just close my eyes, trying to unstress for a minute. Because we did think our business was over. I mean, there were people out buying guns and long lines at the grocery stores. I'm sure you guys remember that stuff. So, thinking about how apartments were going to perform, that was a pretty scary time. But I will credit the United States government and our lenders and our residents, in many cases, really stepping up and doing whatever necessary to help us through that. We had several lenders that emailed us before we emailed them saying, okay, this is what we can do for you. And we had people reaching out, how can we help? And, the help came quickly together, and we were able to navigate every step of the way, how to survive, not to say that default didn't tick up a bit, it certainly did. But, when we were able to take advantage of the government programs, it resolved a lot of that.
Yeah. And those programs didn't come without strings attached. How has that been difficult, or has it been difficult to sort of post pandemic, folks that aren't paying or aren't employed back. There's restrictions on evictions, that sort of thing. How has that been managing? Has that gone okay, or is that still a problem?
Yeah, so kind of two separate categories. If you had a government-backed mortgage, that came with a lot more restrictions accepting the government money, and the evictions were delayed a lot. So that's your Fannie loan, your Freddie loan, some of our larger apartment complexes. If you didn't have a government-backed mortgage, it didn't have as many restrictions. But I would say it went better than anticipated in a lot of cases. And the people who took advantage of the programs and tried to fight us or fight the man did lose out. Like we would say, hey, look, you have to comply with the lease agreement. And they're like, no, this and this rent strike, I'm not paying rent anymore type of stuff. Those people, were kind of defeated in the end. And there's a saying like, you can't fight the man. And I would try to explain that to people and said, yes, I know you don't have to pay your rent now, but you will have to eventually. Please make plans for that. And a lot of those people never did and defaulted and eventually were evicted. But those government programs did help out a lot of people that were really truly in need. So I know the woman who didn't pay her rent because she got COVID and was in the hospital for 6 weeks. Her and I applied for the SARA program together. The SARA paid her rent. When she got out of the hospital, she got back her job and she continued to pay her rent. And that's kind of like the feel good story of what happened.
Did anything structurally about your business change as a result of, not being able to go on site as often? Or I'm thinking about the adoption, sort of the speed up of the adoption of virtual leasing and that sort of thing. Is there anything like that changed about the way you guys manage buildings as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, so the number one thing is we closed our offices. And when we closed our offices, I realized that the people that used to come in our offices are not the people that we want to come to our office or that we. Uh, yeah, the people. I just realized I was like, oh my god, for 18 years, people have been coming into our office and just totally wasting our time. Um, and so, the packages. You could talk for an hour about the nightmare of organizing packages for people. You lost my package. I'm like, dude, I'm not even supposed to be dealing with packages. I'm just the property, all that stuff. And so we have not reopened our offices, but what we've done is we've gone with the technology that you were alluding to. So we expanded our hours greatly uh, by using virtual assistants in the Philippines to answer calls and interface with some of those people that used to come into our office. So we've introduced virtual assistants into the business. The second thing is we do an Aster room of every single vacant unit. And what's an Aster room is a 3D rendering of the unit. So the resident doesn't need to come see the unit. They can see it exactly as they would without being there. Now, of course, a lot of people still don't find that 100% acceptable, and they still want to come see it. No problem. You can schedule a tour. Um, the third thing we did is we use Show Mojo for scheduling. So for the first 17 years of my career, I would have to speak to either via email, chat, or phone anybody who wanted to come see the apartment, and I would have to give them a couple different options of when to choose, and then they would get back to me, and then I would book them on the calendar, and then I would notify the leasing agent, all that. With Show Mojo, it's a low grade artificial intelligence which knows where your leasing agents are going to be at all times, and so then when people request showings, it knows when to schedule them and gives the people the show times. So that's helped out a lot. And then the fourth thing is Show Mojo Tours. It's a lockbox that you install on a vacant, move-in ready apartment or home that has a private entrance. Doesn't work as well in large apartment buildings, but if they've got a private entrance, you can install the Show Mojo lockbox, and the resident can show the apartment or the house to themselves at any time, 24/7. So there's no more, hey, I'm a nurse, I work till 9 p.m. Can you show me the apartment at 9:30 p.m.? It's you can actually show the apartment yourself at 9:30 p.m.
we'll put links to those technologies in the show notes. Those are great. Those are great tips. Thanks, sir. Um, so clearly virtual leasing took hold. One of the things we're dealing with now, post pandemic, also is a shortage of workers in this business. There's a lot of people that realize they could make as good of money working from home in other industries, and this has always been a hard business for the reasons we were talking about earlier. Um, now we're having trouble attracting workers into the business, both managers and service managers. Have you experienced this? And how, if so, how are you guys dealing with that?
Yeah, so it's the number one challenge in the industry right now is attracting the talent necessary to increase the size of your business. So we have, over the past 2 years, turned down several assignments just because we felt that we couldn't staff them in an adequate. We've resolved that in a lot of most cases. But it's still the number one challenge. So, the basic laborer, that's your young adult who is not going to college but needs a job. That person's almost disappeared from the marketplace completely in the industry. I believe there's a lot of video games, entrepreneurial type stuff they're approaching, like trading Bitcoin, like all sorts of stuff they're doing instead of, out here doing landscaping in the 100-degree heat like they used to. Um, but like, let's say we used to pay those guys 10 to 12 an hour. Now it's definitely 18 to 22 an hour. So it's, almost double. And then the maintenance person. So we're in Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is near Detroit. And in the foreclosure crisis, a lot of auto workers got laid off. A lot of people, a lot of construction projects weren't going as actively as they would. So those people slid down the scale into maintenance. So like you could hire a high-end carpenter that would normally be working like in a hospital, like doing high-end trim work. You could hire them to be your maintenance person because that work kind of disappeared a little bit. Right now, with the auto industry at full employment, all construction companies at full employment, those people are gone, and you're left with a pool of maintenance workers who are not as reliable, not as skilled, and so you run through a lot of people, and you'll look at a resume and you'll say, okay, you've worked at 3 different property management companies this year. Why is that? And they give you like reasons why, but once you hire them, you realize why. It's because they can't be somewhere at 8 o'clock 5 days a week, and they're not as skilled as they say they are. So what we've implemented to resolve that is we've hired an HR director for the first time in 4 years, because usually I would just handle that because people would call me and say, "Can I get a job?" and it just wasn't as time consuming. But we've hired an HR director for the first time in 4 years. We are using referral programs, online advertising, signs. Uh, we recently had a program where we went into hardware stores and went into Lowe's and Home Depot and approached people working on projects. Say, hey, do you need a job? Do you need anybody to have a job? But then once you hire them, that's where you really have to step up and try to retain them. And so that's through training, pay, and bonuses. And one thing I did last week is I brought $30,000 cash to our Christmas party and gave it away to all of my employees. It was $200 per year of service. So the maintenance guy who had worked for me for 18 years, he got $3,600. The director of operations who worked here for 12 years, he got $2,400. And I think people know that we will take care of them and reward them for working for us long term, and that's helped keep a core group of people working for me an average of 10 years. And so right now, we've got our core group that's more than 10 years, and then we've got like 30 employees that work for us for less than 6 months just because property management's got that turnover, a lot. And so our goal is, once someone works for us, to retain them, and you've got to just be working on that every day.
Wow. So clearly no magic bullet for sourcing for sourcing workers and new employees. I mean, that is the guerrilla method of going out there and finding people. Yeah. Um, and retention, every employee you retain is one you don't have to hire and retrain. And I don't know what the exact figure was, but there's something around the loss of an employee cost a management company upwards of 1.5 to 2x their salary in lost efficiencies. Yeah.
Yeah, well, when before I hired an HR director, I tried out a headhunter, and the headhunter charges 33% of their first year's salary. And if they last 90 days, uh, great, that's a success. If they're less than 90 days, the headhunter will find you a new employee for free. And there were definitely a couple people that lasted 91 days.
I'm actually surprised you found, headhunters are usually at this, they want to place employees that are making, $100,000 a year plus. I'm surprised and encouraged that you found headhunters that can help at, at the property manager, service manager level, find those folks because,
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, it took a lot of work, and it was a person starting out in the headhunting industry. And then after a couple months, she said, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too hard.
yeah, okay, never mind. Forget what I just said. Yeah, I'm back to my other premise, which is probably true. All right. How about I'm trying to think of Jobbot. Trying to think of another one that I've seen. Have you tried any automated systems that go out and reach out to people through LinkedIn and that sort of thing, and try to line up interviews? Does that work in our industry? Have you not tried anything like that?
I haven't tried that yet, but I will tell you one thing we do is try to hire people that used to work for us. Because we have lost some good people, and so keeping in touch with them and reaching back out has been successful. So, the key is just paying them more. But if they were good, you might want to do that. And so we've had some recent success where it's like, okay, John left our employment 6 months ago. Let's check in with him, see how he's doing. And John's like, yeah, this job I took isn't as good as they made it sound. Say, okay, well, how about we used to pay you this? If you come back, we'll pay you this. We've had some success with that.
Well, then a nice thing you control is often, at least on 2/3 of your portfolio, is you can make the choice as the investor and owner to pay more, maybe even above market, recognizing that that person is there's so much riding on the success of the property based on that person's success and retention. You can make that decision to pay more. It is more difficult for third-party managers to convince sometimes owners that they get the added value of paying more for somebody so that they will stay. Good people are so hard to find. It's always puzzled me why that argument seems to fall so flat with many operators. Is that extra half a point of NOI really worth churning a community manager who's stellar? It's always puzzling to me. Is there anything else on the horizon that you think will impact your business, technology that you're looking to adopt, efficiencies that you think can be achieved through new processes and that sort of thing? Is there anything, what's on the horizon for your company now?
Yeah, so for the last 3 months, we've been working on our virtual assistants. We now have 8 virtual assistants that sit in the Philippines, and they allow us to do a lot of extra work for our clients that we weren't able to do in the past. So for instance, we make over 1,000 purchases a month at Lowe's, Ace Hardware, Granger, some of those suppliers. And in the past, our clients would have to reach out and say, you charge me for this. What's this? Well, with our virtual assistants, we have actually a full-time person that all they do is they snippet the Lowe's bill and upload it into the client portal so that the client can get a better accounting, a better picture of what they're working on. But I would encourage anyone who's trying to operate apartments at scale to start investigating bringing at least one virtual assistant into their business that can do a lot of the things that are repetitive. So, for instance, Kim, one of our virtual assistants, today is the 4th or 5th of the month, And, she ran a report, saw that 400 people in our 3,000 unit portfolio hadn't paid their December rent. So what Kim is doing this week is she's calling, emailing, and texting 400 people that owe. That's a huge relief off the property managers. The property managers can now work on asset management, apartment turns, upgrades, lease renewals, bigger picture stuff, where Kim is sitting in the background making those basic collection calls, getting the month going. So that's an example of a way to implement a virtual assistant into the business, and they don't need to be sitting in the United States earning $45,000 to $65,000 a year. They're in the Philippines, and they're much less expensive than that.
Yeah. So I was at OpTech recently, and I think without question and I've been talking about this in a number of our podcasts with different guests. Without question, the number one subject du jour is centralization and specialization. So, what kind of on the order of what you're talking about is offloading some of the drudgery that mires down service managers, community managers, and finding some way to centralize that to people that's what they do and that's all they do, and they do it better, faster, cheaper than you do it yourself. So it sounds like you're on the early cusp of that already.
Yeah, and you've been calling your credit company for over 20 years to people outside of the United States, but it's property management fallen way behind some of that stuff. And I'm not saying you're not going to be hiring more people in the United States. In fact, I think these virtual assistants are going to allow us to even hire more people and pay them more. I've had some criticism online when I talk about virtual assistants. Why didn't you hire someone in the U.S.? I say because no one in the U.S. wants to call 400 people who owe money this week. They want a different job. I'm going to hire that person that I would have hired to do a different job that they're going to enjoy.
Yeah, I hear that. All right, well, let's wrap up with any if you could offer one piece of advice to budding real estate moguls like yourself, what advice would you offer to folks?
Yeah, so my advice is there's two tracks to get into this business. There is being the property manager, and we've talked a lot about some of the negative stuff and how much hard work it is to be the property manager. But there is another solution to invest in real estate that can sit on the and we offer that through BealCapital.com. We do real estate syndications. And so if you're a person who listened to this podcast and thought, well, Stewart sounds nice, but that sounds like a heck of a lot of work, and I either have a doctor and I have a different job, or I don't want to get my hands that dirty, we offer real estate syndications too. And that's a way to invest in our projects without having to do the work. You can go backpacking, in the Appalachian Trail for 3 weeks this coming summer, because you can trust that our team will be there to back up your real estate investments. You don't have to be on the ground every day like I. So, we can talk about that next time.
Love it. Yeah, so many things to talk about when it comes to syndication and how those work and promotes and things to know and understand from an investor standpoint. But I totally agree with you. Great way to real passive investing is probably buying into a REIT, but investing into a syndication, semi-passive, you do get greater visibility, I think, into the operations of the asset, greater choice in kinds of assets you're investing in. Can be very lucrative, very profitable, provide great returns, provided that you've got a great sponsor like Stewart here, overseeing the asset. So thanks, Professor Beal, for sharing all of your wisdom today, and giving us a great lecture for the class. I think there's a lot of great nuggets that you dropped here today for folks on the operations side, and we really appreciate that. Great having you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us at this week's episode of the Apartment Academy podcast. The Apartment Academy is a production of Leonardo 24/7, the industry's leader in multifamily operations and maintenance software. At Apartment Academy, we realize the hard work that goes into property management and the stress that comes along with it. Leonardo 24/7 takes the guesswork out of your team's day-to-day by providing customized daily guidance on tasks that need to be done, guaranteeing consistent operations across your entire portfolio. To learn more, visit www.leonardo247.com today.